السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. طيب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على حضرة سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا، إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا أكرم الأكرمين. أما بعد, so alhamdulillah, welcome to the fourth class of our course on marriage preparation. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue the last portion of the personal of the questions on the personal checklist. And inshallah ta'ala, since today is the last session in this course, inshallah I'll do my best bi'idhnillahi ta'ala so I can open more room, inshallah, in terms of time for receiving questions. We usually take them after an hour, and then we go for another hour or so. So inshallah ta'ala, I'll do my best that we can finish, inshallah, earlier than the hour so that we can take as many questions as possible, inshallah ta'ala. I already received a question today on WhatsApp, so inshallah I'll respond to that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala at the end of the session. طيب. So we stopped at the question that says, do I practice self-care? Some people are too busy in life that they, and as much as it is understandable, as much as one should not cave in to this reality, which is people are busy. So whenever they go through any sort of hardship or calamity, they tend to brush it off and they don't practice self-care, right? And this advice I should give it to myself, but before giving it to anybody else. Sometimes we go through certain, episodes of whether grief, pain, anger, that it did not materialize into a psychological disorder per se. Sometimes you go certain physical injuries that are not severe, but ought to be treated. So what happens is that we procrastinate. We procrastinate on personal injuries. We procrastinate on emotional wounds. We procrastinate on spiritual shortcomings, right? We keep brushing it off until it becomes a snowball. طيب, how is this related to marriage? Well, in marriage, your responsibilities will be at least multiplied by 2. Sometimes I tell some people when they ask me about marriage and so on and so forth, especially people who already have jobs and so on and so forth, I'm like, are you ready to have a second job? Because some people have this expectation about marriage, and I'm not saying this to discourage people, but to understand the reality. Again, blessings in this dunya, you cannot have, any blessing in this dunya is like a coin with 2 sides. There's the side that we enjoy. There's the side of pleasure and joy and happiness and gain, right, and benefit. But there is a side of responsibility. There is a side of duties that come with the blessing. Right? There is a side in which we may be trialed or tested by these blessings or through them. This is a fact of life. And if you escape marriage because you don't want to take responsibilities, then that should not be a reason to escape marriage only, but you would escape any other blessing of this dunya. See? But having said that, so I'm not trying to say, to discourage people from marriage, but to see it for what it is, to see both sides of it. So sometimes when I find some, and most of my experiences were with young men, or graduated from college, had a job for the past 3-4 years or so, right? After they graduated, they're getting into their late 20s and they're like, all right, we want to get married and so on and so forth. And they only look at the the cuddling part of marriage. And I usually tell them, are you ready to have a second job? And a third one. They go like, what do you mean? Well, in marriage, you'll have responsibilities. You'll have responsibilities towards your wife. And even before having children, you'll have responsibilities towards your wife's family. You'll have to share with them in their happy times, and you will share with them in their sad times as well. Are you ready for that? Tayyib, how is this related to practicing self-care? Well, if you're not practicing self-care and you're already too busy when you're single, how are you going to do it when you're burdened with responsibilities? And you ought to develop this habit as you're single. And as you get to know your future spouse, you have to let them know that, sometimes I have to take a pause, not to take a pause from the marriage. That's not what I mean. But the two spouses have to give each other room for self-care. It's not that during this period of self-care, that they neglect each other or something of that sort, but that it is something that both of them have to come in agreement about. Sometimes they might face something at work that is difficult, right? And they need time to repair. They need time to recharge. They need time to, reconsider certain priorities that they have. Right? Reconsider the course, the direction, the family's direction in terms of what they aspire to, in terms of their ambitions, whether it be social, financial, spiritual, whatever it may be. So practicing self-care, getting into the habit of, I need to take a pause. We always, because of the nature of life in this, because see, this is a ramification of the Western philosophy, modern Western philosophy. In modern Western philosophy, speed is a virtue. Speed is something that is virtuous. By the way, this was not something of virtue in the Muslim civilization. Quality is a virtue, not speed. Right? And what I mean by speed, fastness, being fast. So in the Muslim tradition, being fast is not a virtue. A virtue is quality. That's this is the virtue. Good quality is the virtue. What about the speed of things? They should take their natural course. They should take their natural time. And in the Muslim tradition, everything that takes its time, its natural time, everything should take its natural time. Education should take its natural time. Spiritual development should take its natural time. Don't try to reap a fruit before it has ripened. Don't try to conclude things before their due time. In the modern Western philosophy, being fast is virtuous in itself. We see these with the technologies, with the communication, with fast food. And people for a long time, they thought that when you do things fast, you're not losing on quality, until they discovered that fast food is one of the biggest reasons behind the massive spread of obesity, right? Mass production. Again, see, this is also another virtue in the modern Western philosophy. How does this impact oneself? We're always running, always rushing to do things. So when we rush to do things, we lose on quality. Everything you do it faster than usual, you're paying for it. Don't ever think that when you do something not in its natural course of time, do not ever think that you're not losing on quality. You're paying for that saved time from something. And it's not the money only. There's something that you're paying. There's something that you're losing. All right. So if we don't practice self-care as individuals, as singles, right, how would we assume that we're going to practice it when we were married? See? So this is a habit that you ought to develop. It is something that is for the health of your life. I don't mean here health, physical health only. Physical health is included, but also emotional, spiritual. People now are too busy, for example, to grieve. They're like, we don't have time to grieve. So things pile up. People are too busy to resolve anger. I don't have time. So they delay. They delay the grief. They delay resolving the anger or an inner conflict. Things pile up. What happens when things pile up? Down the road, oh, I'm depressed. I'm suffering from so-and-so. I have insomnia. I have this, I have that, psychological disorders. Oh, now I have to go to a therapist. Now I have to see a psychiatrist. Now I have to see if I have to take medication. Now I have to do sessions in cognitive behavioral therapy. See? Somebody is experiencing some sort of a back pain. They don't go to the doctor. Too busy. They keep delaying it, and then now there's a problem in the backbone. At the beginning, it was just a sprain in the muscle, that sort of thing. Oh, now there's a disc. See? So if you don't get into this practice, especially in our times, perhaps our parents or grandparents or grand-grandparents did not need to do these things. Or maybe they did, but they didn't apply it. But with the current reality of today's world, capitalism, neo-capitalism, right? People face vicious conditions at work and in different endeavors of life. So if you don't practice self-care before you get married, then do you expect yourself going to do it after? Second question, do I accept my personal flaws and willing to receive feedback and not react defensively or impulsively? This is a very important one for two reasons. On one hand, it's if the answer is no, then this is a sign of a narcissistic behavior. It's not necessarily that the person is a narcissist, but this is a sign of narcissism. And one has to be honest with oneself. Also, because it's healthy for the relationship to receive feedback. And if you don't accept the feedback, what happens? Your spouse will start, they will try once, twice, thrice, but if you're somebody who's not accepting the feedback, very defensive, so they're gonna be disappointed, they're gonna be dissatisfied, but they won't tell you. And when people have an accumulation of dissatisfaction, they react differently. They reach a tipping point in which they just cannot take it anymore. And people react differently. So it is important to have this capacity, to have this etiquette of willing to receive feedback. Yes, sometimes people give feedback in a bad way. We can coach them in what ways you would like to take the feedback or receive it. But the point is, do we accept feedback? Do we get defensive when people critique us? Then, have I addressed my past traumas? Whether it be emotional, psychological, physical, sexual. Again, past traumas, if they're not addressed, people sometimes are, they think that, just after the wedding, everything will disappear. And you don't want to have any sort of bad surprises for your spouse after the marriage. It happens. People have certain traumas. They don't address it. They don't try to fix it. Their fiancé don't know about it. After they get married, they surprise, their partner with, that they're actually suffering from a trauma and so on and so forth. It's very problematic. One shouldn't wait for after the marriage. Fourth, in today's class, do I have any current addictions? This is extremely important. This is extremely important, extremely important. And addictions vary. Vary from smoking to drugs to sex addiction to pornography to internet, social media addiction, to gaming, especially guys, right? Food. There are different sorts of addictions. And again, these need to be addressed, because don't think that whatever is happening now in your life before marriage, that don't assume that it will not be affected by the marriage. Right? So, for example, somebody who has, let's say, a smoking addiction. Well, after marriage, with the responsibilities, and God forbid if conflicts happen or something of that sort, then that addiction might actually thrive and increase, not decrease. Same thing with drugs, same thing with pornography or sex or anything of that sort. See, I'm not here talking about the halal and haram is clear. I don't have to tell you that drugs are haram. I don't have to tell you that pornography is haram. It should be, one should quit it just because it's haram, but there's another dimension to it as well, other than the spiritual effect. Another important one, very important one, do I have any current serious health conditions? You have to be absolutely clear, explicit, direct, apparent, obvious, blunt about this before marriage. And there are some sort of serious health conditions. If these are things that are transmitted, then the marriage itself could very well be haram upon the person who has this illness. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "La darara wa la dirar." Don't inflict harm on anyone. So yes, one wants to get married, wants the benefit of marriage, but you cannot have the benefit of marriage and then trade that benefit, give in return a health condition, a disease. If it's something treatable, get treated and then get married. Make sure that you're fully recovered. If it's not treatable and it is something that is transmittable to somebody else, the spouse, then don't get married. What if it's not transmittable? Well, you have to be open about it. You cannot surprise the spouse. You cannot surprise your family after marriage. If you didn't know about it, khalas, then you're not responsible. You're not liable for that. But we're talking about somebody who knows, who has a serious health condition, and they don't say it, they don't mention it, so they can get married to the person that they have ambition or they aspire to marry. No, that is haram. So you have to be open about this. This is an issue where people say, but this is private. This is, okay, if you have difficulty speaking up about it, then don't approach marriage. Because this shows that one is not up to the responsibility. If you're open about it and you explain it to them and they are fine, khalas, no problem. But not everybody would be fine with it. Sometimes it happens sometimes that when people, after they get engaged, they discover during engagement that one of the two, has a health condition that is serious. Again, this is not the issue here. This is not the issue here. The issue is somebody, before they propose, they know. So they ought, as they're doing the proposal, as they are approaching the marriage, they should bring it up. Because that will affect the acceptance or the refusal of the proposal. But if something happened after the proposal, it's a different case scenario. They may agree to continue, they may not agree to continue. It's something else. But one here is not liable. It is something that was not planned, something that they did not know about. No harm is done, because this is a test for both sides. And it's something predestined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's out of hand. But if one knows about that beforehand, then tayyib. Something else. If there is a psychological condition, a psychological disorder, also has to be brought up. But one might say, well, if I bring it up, then I will never get married. It's not permissible to cheat people. Right? It's not permissible. So it's not permissible to get engaged and get married, and then they discover that they got married to somebody, for example, who was suffering, let's say, from schizophrenia, for example. See? So these are issues that one cannot be you cannot be not open about it. You have to be open about it. Am I confident in my ability to express my emotions? And this is important for the health of the relationship for both sides. Because you would want to express your emotions to your spouse, and you would want to marry a spouse who expresses their emotion as well. And here, we're not asking about whether you have an ability to express, but are you confident about that? Are you confident about it? Not just merely you're fantasizing about it. And some people are not confident to express emotions, especially emotions of love, verbally. No. Do I feel capable of taking full responsibility of my actions? This is also similar to willingness to accept and to receive feedback. And in marriage, especially husbands, especially in a household that is running in a traditional way, every decision the husband makes affects the wife and the children. Some Muslim men, and I'm saying some, they want and they aspire to have a household that is run in the traditional way, where men are leaders of the household. Part of leadership is responsibility and taking full responsibility. And taking full responsibility means that when you make something wrong, you try your best to fix it, you acknowledge it, you apologize for it. It doesn't belittle you. It doesn't, because it's normal. All of us gonna make mistakes. All of us. Whether men or women, husbands or wives, parents or children. We're all gonna make mistakes. Leaders or subordinates, we're gonna all make mistakes. It's a fact of life. It's part of our journey. Right? So it's not the issue of, well, yes, we ought to try our best to minimize them, but we cannot exclude them out of the equation of life. They're just an essential part of the equation. But it's about how we're going to deal with them. Are we going to take responsibility for them? Are we going to acknowledge them? Are we going to try to fix them? Are we going to apologize for and so on, right? Am I pressured by my family in marriage and or choosing my future spouse? This is where the culture warfare comes in place. Am I pressured by my family in marriage and or choosing my future spouse? If the answer is yes, then you should do your best to not enter the marriage being pressured. No one ever makes unless, but theoretically speaking, when people are pressured, they don't make the right decision. And there are two kinds of pressure. There's the pressure of you have to get married, and there's the pressure of you have to marry your cousin. See? And it's a difficult thing to do. Apologies. It's a different thing to go through. It's a difficulty. It's a calamity. It's a hardship. But what is more difficult is to enter a marriage that you resent. Either because you resent marriage, or because you're not ready, or you don't want marriage at the moment, or because you resent the person. You're being forced to marry the person that you're getting married to. The hardship of that is more difficult than the hardship of the pressure of the family. And it is somewhat selfish as well. Some people, because they don't want to go through the pressure of the family pressure. So they go like, all right, you want me to marry my cousin? I'll marry her. You want me to marry my cousin? I'll marry him. And then they take revenge from their parents through the cousin, through the husband, or through the wife. So what do? They project the trauma on somebody who's innocent. And they become a replica of the parents whom they don't like for what they do for them. So they become a replica of the very thing that they hated. Think about that. If you ever feel pressured to marry somebody that you don't want to marry, And I do concede it's difficult to face the family pressure. It's hard. But consider this notion, consider this concept. You may very well project the trauma of the family, the pressure of the family, on the spouse, and they're innocent. You might say, well, I'm innocent too. I didn't do anything to my parents, right? True, correct. Correct. But don't turn this into a vicious cycle. Make the hatred, make the difficulty, make the conflict, make the trauma stop at you. Don't let it flow from you to somebody else. Be courageous enough to face that. Do everything possible that you can absorb that. But don't let it flow from you to someone else. Don't project it on someone else. Don't transfer the trauma to someone else. Am I a person who constantly demands validation and seeks attention from others? This is important because people who do, they tend to be very sensitive, meaning extremely sensitive. They tend to be also extremely territorial. And it is fine to have ghayra, to have territoriality, as long as it does not go overboard. It is fine to be sensitive about some issues. That is fine. But if you're too sensitive and you're too territorial, then this is the recipe for marriage failure. Am I financially independent, and am I able and willing to provide for a home? This question is precisely for men. All right. Am I financially independent, and am I able and willing to provide for a home? This is a pretty clear-cut, straightforward question. Because if not, and you don't have a family support, then it will be better to wait until you're financially independent. Obviously, it depends, but in some cases, you must wait. And don't be lured by the fact that, oh, but this family is accepting me the way I am. Be very careful. Or this woman, she's accepting me the way I am. Be very careful with this one. Because things could change after marriage. Some families or some women, they may think that this is just a period of time and you're going to pass it through. But then things happen. So I know men, for example, who were lured in what I can call an easy marriage. The family of the wife did not demand anything from them. The wife at the beginning was very willing. Don't worry. Even if we're just going to eat bread and salt. But then after marriage, month, 2, 3, 4, 6, a year, things are not changing. And now there's a baby. Things are becoming more difficult. They have to make even more sacrifices. Then the essence of people, the reality of people The meanings that are deep inside of people come to the surface at these moments. And then all of a sudden, they're not happy anymore. All of a sudden, oh, you're not providing for my daughter. You're not providing for my sister. Oh, you're the wife. I wasn't expecting that we're gonna go, without so-and-so for that much time, for that long time. I thought it's just a few months. And people try to remind them, but remember, I told you I don't know. And then they reply, well, I thought you were just saying that because you weren't, you were just saying that because for whatever reason. And they get into a hearsay. You said, no, I meant this. No, you meant that. For men, don't be lured by an easy marriage. And actually, don't approach as long as you're not ready. بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة. Excuse me. You know yourself better than anybody else. Things happen. You might think that my financial my financial situation will be better because I'm expecting a raise or something of that sort, and then some sort of financial crisis happens in your country, and massive layoffs, and then instead of having a raise, find yourself without a job. See? And I should give if I would give an advice to men specifically, if you can do, before you get married, to save what can cover for a year of expenses or 6 months. Meaning, God forbid, you got married, and then the next month after marriage, you find yourself laid off without a job. You have what covers you for 6 months or a year. And obviously, this is something, by the way, this is something that I know maybe for some here it's too late, but this is something that parents, especially with the current conditions, should have raised their sons accordingly. Because people now, they graduate from high school and college, and they are financially illiterate. And they make the worst financial decisions they could ever make. And they round up approaching their 30s or their late 20s, and they have zero savings. And if they do, barely what gets them to get married. Just establish a house, furniture, and so on and so forth, and then zero. So if you ask yourself, what does it mean when you read this question, am I financially independent? What is financial dependency? Because one might say, well, look, what is financial independency? Because look, Shaykh, some things happen that are beyond our control. True. And if you read in At-Tariqa al-Muhammadiyya by Mawlana al-Birgivi, al-Hanafi, and so on and so forth, right? One is not forbidden, in fact recommended, to have or to save the food supply of a year. قوت عام, meaning provision of a year. You don't, more than a year, then you get into but at least, so if it's not a year, 6 months. Because unfortunately, some shuyukh make it seem like saving is something that is disliked in the Sharia. Saving, this is for people who are not dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't have tawakkul, don't have reliance. In the Sunnah, it is recommended to save and يدخر قوت عام, to save the provision of a year. And that saving should be different than any other sort of investment. You get my point? So you would have to divide your money. And, I'm sharing this with you. Some of these things we learn the hard way. So you have to save money as much as possible, You have to, okay, so you have your expenses, and then a third for saving for emergency or saving for security. And that is, as I said, 6 months to a year. 3-4 months, but not less than that. And then a third that you're going to invest, so you can have some sort of a passive income next to your job. If you get into your 30s or late 30s not doing that, it's very difficult to do it. So if you are in your early 20s, mid 20s, start working on that. Before approaching marriage, you should work on having these 3 sorts of or this threefold division of your income: expenses, security, investment. If the security is being invested, but it's easy to retrieve and you're not going to lose on it, fine. Otherwise, just keep it for security. If there is a halal way that it would also increase while it's very easy for you to retrieve at any moment, Bismillah. And have some sort of investment that gets you revenue. This way, after you get married, trust me, many of the conflicts are resolved when one enters marriage financially stable. Not just stable, very stable. Especially in this time, in this era that we live in. Unless, your family has some kind of, acres, of crops where you're going to farm with them and you eat from, what you plant, and khalas, you're good to go. Other than that, if you have like a 9 to 6 type of job, then you have to do that. This is very important for your marriage, because men, when they're stressed because of their financial situation and decisions and responsibilities, you won't, as a man, you won't necessarily have room, because of the difficult stress, you won't necessarily have room for romance, for fulfilling the psychological needs of your family. Not just romance with your wife and but also caring for your children and playing with them. You find yourself, instead of having one job, you're going to need two jobs. Right? You find yourself, after you return from work, right? You're too strained, you're too stressed about what's going to happen the next day, so you don't have the psychological effort to, apology, you don't have the psychological, you don't have the clear mind. Yes, at times of stress, stressing won't help. So if you play with them, that could, treat your stress. Not everyone can do it. See, not everyone can do it. So don't delay, don't wait until after marriage to learn these sort of financial skills. As a man, it is incumbent upon you to learn about these things before you get married. And by the way, a woman wouldn't want to get married to, because this is one of the meanings of al-qawi. The wife who became the wife of Sayyidina Musa, alayhi salam, she described him to her father as al-qawi al-amin, strong and honest. So the meanings of strength is financial literacy, because you're responsible for a family. So some men, they're too into the technicalities of their work. They're engineers, they're doctors, they're teachers, they are clerks, whatever it may be. They're too into the technicalities of their work. They go to the work, they come back home. Go to work, come back home. And they only think about the projects and the execution of the tasks that are being asked from them. But in terms of financial literacy of what's going on in society, what's going on around the world, what's going on economically, what's going on globally, what do I need to do? Because this is like having a ship and you're in the middle of the sea and you're the captain of the ship. So you have to know your geography, you have to know the weather conditions, you have to know what supply do you have, you have to know what is the destination you're going to. This is part of manhood. And this should actually, I should say that also in the parenting course, because this is something that now Muslim parents ought to, if they didn't learn it, they ought to learn it, and they ought to teach it to their kids. If you're giving your child allowance, teach them to divide it this way. Expenses, security, investment. How are you going to invest as kids? Teach them. Or at least make them learn to save from their allowance. But if you don't get into the habit of saving money early on, you will not be able to do it after marriage. Like, I think I went too long with this. See, this gets us into the question after it. Do I have a good balance between saving and spending? I think I already covered that. Am I aware of my family culture and how similar or different from a prospective spouse? As I said earlier, you have to learn. You're not just marrying the woman. You're not just marrying the man. You're gonna be tied to the family. So you have to learn about the family culture. And what I mean by family culture, the culture that as a family they belong to, and also their very culture, the culture of the family, not only the culture that the family belongs to. You get my point? So say for example, because of the question I received today on WhatsApp, somebody who is, let's say, marrying somebody who has an Indian background. So Indians have a culture different from the culture of Arabs. And within Arabs, for example, Egyptians are different from Moroccans, different from Saudis, different from Qataris, different from Libyans, and so on and so forth. So you would have to learn, if you're marrying somebody from a different region and a different culture, you have to learn about that culture. But also as families, they have their own unique cultures as well. So you have to learn about that. طيب. So alhamdulillah, we came through all these questions. Let me now, the personal checklist, let me now, inshallah, take your questions. Let me begin with the... طيب, I'll take this one, and then I'll take the one from WhatsApp, inshallah. And then return again to the questions here. Okay, Noreen, you can go ahead. Let me. Excuse me. I think Sister Noreen had her hand raised. I don't know where she went. Okay. There's a question. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum assalam. I am a 30-year-old single mom of 2 boys, preschoolers with an absent father. Went through a divorce 3 years ago. I have been in contact with a man who I would like to make nikah with because of his deen, truthful character, and outer beauty. He is 10 years my senior. Lives in another province and is a self-driven businessman. We met online and have been speaking for a year. He is interested in me and often tells me he would like to marry me, but is not mentally ready for this step now, as he has been alone for 10 years and experienced the loss and grief of his 2 children. They live in another country from his previous marriage. Another major factor is his not wanting to make nikah soon is the responsibility of taking on another man's kids, which he feels not ready for. After 10 months of speaking, we finally met up and got the feel of one another's energy, and now even more so, both want to make nikah, me sooner rather than later, to fulfill my obligations as a Muslim woman and to avoid haram interactions. I am employed and don't expect him to take care of my kids. To this day, nikah is always brought up but never spoken about fully. He says he will come to visit my home and meet my family, but this is not a priority because of the demands of his business. I have offered to virtually assist him with his business, and I am prepared to move with my kids as this will align with where I would like to be for both myself and my kids Islamically. On the one hand, I know he feels strongly about me. He often tells me to sabr, meaning have patience, but I have been having serious conversations with him since the beginning of the year. And still, when I ask for answers, I feel like I'm expecting too much and my questions are deflected. I have made istikhara and the responses from this seem positive. I would need you to elaborate on that. Allah knows best. I am tired of the tug of war and not knowing whether I'm coming or going with this man we speak for most of the day, and it's like we're in a relationship. His last comment in nikah was that when he comes to visit me next, but I feel like all this is jokes to pass by time. I've asked him to make istikhara, but he keeps telling me I am pushing a nikah agenda, so it leaves me confused. I'm seeking advice on whether or not I should wait for this man or let him go. Let him go. All I want is a commitment timeline. Let him go. The sooner the better. I don't want to I don't want to use harsh words. Um, Look, I don't know either of you, but you said at the very beginning that, um, let me scroll up. I have been in contact with a man who I would like to make nikah with because of his deen, truthful character. And at the end, some of the statements that you said, I'm tired of the tug of war, not knowing whether I'm coming or going with this man. I have asked him to make istikhara, but he keeps telling me I'm pushing a nikah agenda, so it leaves me confused. Right? There's a place where you said that he deflects the questions. So, do you see here? This is one of the difficulties of one of the downfalls of meeting people online. I have great reservations against marriage that is through, meeting somebody online, chatting for months, and then meeting them, and so on and so forth. The way I see this, it's very toxic because, for the past months or so, you are, again, I want to be as clear with you and as explicit, but I'm choosing my words because I don't want to hurt you, right? But I have a responsibility to give you advice. So please forgive me if any of my words are hurtful, right? But in my view, it's a toxic relationship, right? And many things could happen. Many things could happen with this relationship, meaning many bad things could happen. As somebody who's from outside, you say this is a businessman and so on and so forth, and yet you chat most of the day. طيب. So, are you being used? This is a question you ought to ask yourself. Does he find you easy? Some men are like that. Some men, they don't marry the women whom they find easy to get. So you're just there to, keep him some company, to feel that there's somebody in their life, but he doesn't want to take the responsibility. It's a toxic relationship. And God forbid, worst case, that this person is playing you, and God forbid one day things could develop into haram things without you knowing it. So, as I was reading this, it just actually, if you read your question out loud to yourself, you'll find the answer. So, I think you owe yourself a better opportunity. Right? You owe yourself somebody who is, because look, at the end of the day, women are ought to be sought by men. Yes, it is permissible and so on and so forth, where a woman can make a proposal, but I'm naturally speaking, we're not talking here per se about the halal and haram. Naturally speaking, women ought to be sought, not the other way around. So you owe yourself a man who is keen to marry you, who would make sacrifice, not that you travel with your kids for him, that he travels for you. You owe yourself a man who, once he has interest in you, he asks you, can I come to your family? But from what you're saying, and I'm listening from one side, I'm reading from one side, it's a toxic relationship. You're being used. This could develop into something seriously haram than what is already haram in it. And I don't see the descriptions of the person that you provided at the beginning can be defended or sustained after what you said at the end of the question. I'm giving you the advice that I would give to my sister, my daughter, with absolute honesty. Wait. Wa alaikum salam. Kids are a big part of marriage and choosing a future spouse. My question is surrogacy due to medical issues allowed in Islam? I'm a young female, and I was recently told that I'm unable to carry/sustain a pregnancy due to a medical condition. Because of this, I explored my fertility options and had my eggs frozen as an alternative option. Should I tell a future husband that I cannot have children? The answer is yes. Now, the other issue, I don't have an immediate answer for. But should you tell a future husband? Yes, you should. جزاكم الله تعالى خير. بارك الله تعالى فيكم. بارك الله تعالى فيكم سيدي Emir. Yes, I agree. I have a question. And before I take this one, I will take this one, and there's also a question on WhatsApp. Inshallah, we'll also be having a parenting course that is starting in 2 weeks' time, inshallah. So those of you who are interested, inshallah ta'ala, can reach out to Muslims Connected. I think we'll be announcing about that very soon, inshallah. Naam, I have a question. I'm getting married, inshallah, next year. طيب, inshallah. My fiancé is a doctor, and I'm just wondering what advice you have to adapt to his busy schedule and and how for him to adapt and compensate during the times he is available slash free. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair. So, alhamdulillah, my father, rahimahullah, was a physician, and my mother as well. And often my father would, sometimes would have to spend, in some cases, he would have to sleep over in the hospital for a couple nights. Sometimes he had, he worked at hospitals that are out of town as well. So it is, it's a challenge for the family and for the, for the father or for the husband as well. But it's also the nature of things. People would work as doctors or as officers, whether army officers or police officers, and they have different work conditions. Or even scholars, and would travel, to places or have classes all day or things of that sort. Right. So, what advice would I give? Well, 2 or 3 things. One for you is to, I don't know if you work or if you have some sort of a, something that some sort of a habit, a skill, activity, something of that sort. What I mean is, keep yourself busy as well. At some point, you'll be busy with with kids and children and so on and so forth. But at this period of time, do establish something for yourself, whether it be a craft that you do, or some sort of an activity, something that is fruitful, something that is beneficial, something that you can also find interest and ambition in, and you would like to work on, and so on and so forth. Something for you also to share with him when he is, back from work and has free time. So this is one. The other, you have to develop a great understanding between you guys, especially in terms of communication wise. So you can, alhamdulillah, this is the positive side of, of the technology, right? Of WhatsApp and, Telegram and things like that. So you can, both of you guys can sort of stay in touch, even though that he's not with you, you're not with him, he's at work, but you can stay, gestures that are done through text messages, voice notes, short videos, something of that sort. Right? But that would not happen unless you guys come in agreement, and in agreement that communication is absolutely important, and in agreement on that you're keen about communicating to one another, right? And the keenness of him on being a family man, right? So, so this is very important, right? My father, rahimahullah, like, he would, because later on, I came to Egypt. He stayed, my mother and my sister in the States, and we communicated online. But alhamdulillah, because as a family, we're strongly connected, right? When he returned to Egypt, it was not like, even though it was a few, some years after, we never felt that we sort of lost touch with each other, right? Whatever is happening during the day, I send them a video, I send a picture, a voice note, they send back, that sort of thing. So if you are keen about communication, you will find ways to do it. right? Some people, for example, when they travel or they get busy, they go absolutely offline. So it will take few seconds. It doesn't have to be like half an hour chat. That's difficult for, uh, um, but even as he's rushing in the hospital or walking or something, he can open the phone, sends you a 10 seconds message, that sort of thing, right? Um, and also you ought to be sensible in terms of knowing like when does he have free time during the day. If he doesn't reply immediately, don't get too sensitive about it. But again, this is why I'm saying you ought to have this conversation about communication and so on and so forth. um, so this is what I can and one thing one advice I would give, if there is a possibility where he gets a vacation, for example, let him have a buffer. Because sometimes men with very busy schedules, when they jump immediately from work into vacation, they feel that vacation is another job. You get my point? So they're so stressed by work. Sometimes they just want to have like a day of just doing nothing. Because when they're with the family, their kids, they want to spend time and play and so on and so forth. But sometimes he wants to recharge, right? So that this is important. If he does not recharge, then he would not be able to enjoy the vacation. So consider that as well. This is something that I do usually either at the beginning or at the end of the vacation before returning to work. There's just one day, where, I tell my wife, right, this, today I won't go to the sea or the pool or anything like that. Today I'm just resting because tomorrow I have work, right? So have a buffer. This is very important. So that he can feel that he sort of recharged for work, or prepared himself for the because during that free time, you guys will you will have very busy days. You want to spend every minute with him, right? And the children as well. You want to spend every minute. So the way he will feel it, the way he will experience this, okay, so at work, I am always busy, always doing things and so on and so forth. And then when I take vacation, I'm also don't and some wives will go like, but this is vacation, you should be happy with this. Yes, but people still also need their free time as well. Right? Their free time as well. Sometimes men, they internalize this as a responsibility. Right? So I'm responsible for work. I'm responsible to play with my kids. I'm responsible to have fun with my wife. So sometimes they feel like, okay, but I just need my own time. And I just want to sit on the couch, watch a soccer game, or just play PlayStation, something like that. Right? So make sure that in the vacation itself, in the free time, where you guys going to spend time together after he had long period of work, make sure that he has a buffer time for himself. And he should also, on the other hand side, the way a man can compensate this, to show gratitude, gratefulness, and appreciation to the wife. Because there's a sacrifice being made. And if he's grateful, showing gratitude, sending message to check how you're doing, do you need anything, how's everything, to show that he's concerned, that even though that he's busy at work, but he's thinking about you. When he sends these sort of messages, it compensates the sacrifice of the wife. What is the Islamic rulings around treating your ex-spouse, especially when interacting with them for the sake of the kids? Sometimes I find myself alone with ex-wife and kids. Is this haram? How old are the kids? The one who's 8 understands what is divorce and what it entails. Okay, so in terms of permissibility, it would be permissible because this is not khalwa, because um, that because they're there. Um, so this is in terms of permissibility. But you have to be mindful about it. You have to be very mindful about it. So based on just what you said, regardless of any other context. So even if this, for example, is not your wife, you're not your ex-wife, apologize. It's not khalwa because of the 8 years old son is present. But this is mere permissibility. Now, contextual circumstances could sway this permissibility towards dislike, for example. See? So you have to be mindful about it. So I'm answering here in principle. Is this khalwa or not? You get my point? Barakallah ta'ala fikum. Let me just retrieve the question I received on WhatsApp. And this is why I also asked you about, does the son understand what the divorce entails? So so if he understands that it entails that it's not permissible for you guys to hold hands, for example, or to cuddle, or to have a hug, or to have your hands around her, that sort of thing. So, or that, and that she has to maintain, the hijab and so on and so forth, these type of things. The question I received on WhatsApp: I would like some advice on sunnah practices of a nikah wedding, and some advice on how to speak to my parents regarding this. I would like to have a really simple nikah following the sunnah, and I want to avoid cultural, between parentheses, Indian functions or practices, as most of them, again, this is according to the question, are against Islam and sunnah: extravagance, music functions, mixed functions. Also, I wanted to ask about decorating your house. Not my house, their house, with lights during their wedding. which is another culture practice, I think. Um, I remember reading a hadith that it's not a good practice, but I'm not sure if I remember this correctly. طيب. Now, I commend and I praise your concern and eagerness to observe what is permissible, what is recommended, what is sunnah, and to abstain from what is haram. This concern, having concern for what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is something that is commended, and it's something that you're rewarded for. Number two, the way we ought to give nasiha or advice to parents ought to be done in a gentle way, implicit as much as possible rather than explicit, in a way that is not hostile, not violent, not aggressive, not demeaning. Not like, I know what's right and you guys are, against Islam. So don't use these terms if you are speaking to them about it. Make it more about what you're comfortable with. If you make the case for your parents who are very keen to make the wedding in the style that you don't like, or the style that you describe, and then you go tell them, but no, I don't want this. This is against Islam. The way your parents will translate it, she's telling us that we are against Islam. So don't make it as such. Tell them, I want to make a wedding that I feel comfortable with. Right? I know that this is what you guys used to, and so on and so forth. But, I want to make it in a way that I feel comfortable. This is my big day, right? And you guys would want to make me happy on that day. Make it through this door, not the door of, this is haram, you guys are doing things against Islam, da 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 da. Don't make it this way, right? I'm not saying that you're doing that, but if you're asking for advice how to bring it up, don't bring it up from you guys are doing haram things directly. No, just tell them, I'm not comfortable with that. You might say, well, they're going to ask me why you're not comfortable. It's just my own preference. I don't see myself happy in this sort of thing. It's not something that I prefer. And I know that you guys love me. I know that you would want to make me happy, right? So if you really want to make me happy, then allow me to do what I want. See? Because if you do it other way around, it will make you happy, but I won't. Let's do something that will make us both happy. It's my big day. Right? You can, I can be spoiled today, so I can get to choose what to do. That sort of thing. If you do it this way, inshallah, they will agree. Right? Now, also, there are things in which there are leeway. Right? So yes, mixed, especially if there's dancing or things like that. But and also if people are not abiding by an Islamic code of dress. Right? But if people are abiding by Islamic code of dress and there are no dancing, right, then I wouldn't say mixing like mingling, but being close in a sense that, not an absolute separate place is fine. Again, as long as there are no sort of dancing or mingling that is haram or something of that sort, and people are, generally speaking, maintaining their, an Islamic dress code. طيب. Also, in terms of music can be used in weddings, right? Yes, there are nuances, subtle differences between the madhahib, but generally speaking, music can be used in weddings, right? Again, which type of music, right? But, and this is why I'm saying, don't take it to extremes. You can make some compromises. If there's something that is there's no consensus about it being haram, and there are some scholars who say it's permissible, that sort of thing, then take that opinion to sort of please your parents, since it's not a clear-cut haram, and it is, some scholars deem it as permissible, so it can go either way. Make some compromises in areas in which compromises can be made. Look, so my engagement, now I'm sharing this with everybody here on YouTube. Our engagement, my wife and I, when we had engagement, so in Egypt, traditionally, people, they make like an engagement ceremony, right? So we, both herself and I, we didn't know like how to bring it, to the families. We're gonna make something very simple. And it took us time to decide what music to be played. And some family members, they wanted to play like pop songs and pop like Egyptian pop music, basically. And we weren't comfortable with that. And they weren't comfortable as well with 100% Islamic nasheeds. They were fine with some of it, but they weren't, they said, no, we want some music around and so on and so forth. So what we were, alhamdulillah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated, we played some, nasheeds and so on and so forth. And then we played some Spanish guitar music, where all of the attendees, including ourselves, we don't know what the words mean. I remember my mother-in-law, she says, Ahmed, you don't have anything in Arabic? I was like, I don't know. This is what's on the USB. And we just rounded up. So people weren't, it's not a music that people were used to. So nobody, went on stage to dance or anything of that sort. It's not the music that they're used to it. And it's not what we really wanted, but at the same time, it's not something that, see, we made a sort of compromise there. And after the engagement and so on and so forth, we made the wedding the way we wanted. See? So explore the areas in which you can make some compromises here and there. Khair, inshallah. طيب. Let me take this last question, bi'idhnillah. A proposal has come and most things match, but they don't practice or follow any tariqah. طيب. We do, but after discussion, they are not objecting, and the boy's offering his support in future. Support of what? A practiced Muslim family. Very king, or you mean very kind? And boy has good character. How problematic can be in the future? A Muslim is not obliged to have a tariqah. But so they don't have to be in a tariqah. They don't have to be in your tariqah also. But also, having said that, if they are, if you mean by that, because see, this question could mean they are, they respect and embrace the spiritual tradition of Islam. It's just that they're not in a tariqah, specific tariqah. It could mean this. And in this case, fine. They don't have to be in a tariqah. As long as they not only not object, they embrace it, but it just happens that they're not following a tariqah. They say maybe tariqah is something that is of a higher level. They're concerned about certain people becoming affiliated with the tariqah, so on and so forth. But generally speaking, they love the saints. They love Sidi Abdul Qadir Jilani, Sidi Ahmed al-Rifa'i, Sidi Sidna Sayyid al-Badawi, Sidi Muhammad Bahauddin Naqshband, Sidi Abul Hasan al-Shadhili, that sort of thing. Okay, fine. Khalas. But if you are in a tariqah and they are anti-tariqah, see, they are, they have a Wahhabi inclined religiosity, that could cause problems in the future. So I let it for you to decide. I think I sort of made it distinguishable for you, inshallah. بارك الله تعالى فيكم. طيب, alhamdulillah. جزاكم الله تعالى خيرا for attendance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this class beneficial for all of us in this world and the hereafter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you immensely for the time and the effort you put in attending this class and this course in general. Inshallah ta'ala, in 2 weeks' time, we have a course on parenting. And inshallah, sometime next year, perhaps in the first half of next year, we'll have a sequel to this course on marriage, inshallah ta'ala. So, jazakumullah ta'ala khairan. Bi'idhnillah, we will meet again. And I thank Muslims Connected for their hosting and collaboration and coordinating this course. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them for it. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and facilitate all their projects and all their endeavors, and everyone here as well. Barakallah ta'ala fikum. Thank you for your attendance, and please forgive me for any shortcomings. And inshallah ta'ala, please, send your feedback to Muslims Connected. I would learn from your feedback, inshallah ta'ala, to improve in the, upcoming courses and the future reiterations of this one or sequels of this one as well. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair wa barakallah ta'ala fikum. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair. Any good that you found in this class, alhamdulillah, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via your sincere intentions, alhamdulillah. And any shortcomings is from me and from the shaitan, so please forgive me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.